and we can kick things off.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our event this evening. We are New England HIMSS, the Student Activities Committee. And before we go ahead to kick off our event, we just wanted to highlight two events to save the date and to keep on to your calendar. So the first event is a Women in HIT event in person. So Rise to the C-Suite, a conversation on exclusive leadership. This event's going to be taking place again in person at Spinelli's in Linfield on Thursday, April 7th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's a great way to get together, meet folks, not just women, men, as well as students, get involved, get in touch with folks, network, and understand what the ins and outs are in terms of rising to the C-suite. So our student member price is listed there, $15. Member price as well as non-member price. Something to keep in mind, and our early bird deadline for this event is March 27th. The second event that we have on deck is our annual HIMSS, New England HIMSS conference. So this chapter event occurs every year, the second week of May. So scheduled May 12th at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. This includes networking, lunch, and so forth. So this will be taking place at the 4 Points in Sheridan in Norwood in the Tiffany Ballroom. We have lots of different vendors and sponsors that will come to this event. They have their own individual tables. Again, a great way to network. Typically, we have around 200 plus attendees, and it's our premier event for the year. So we look forward to having you again in person. Great way to start networking, especially for those who are going to be graduating soon. The 12th is around that graduation date, so something to keep in mind. And again, we're going to be kicking off our event this evening. This is our third webinar hosted by the Student Activities Committee. We are a volunteer-based group, so there's been a lot of effort being put forward from all of our volunteers on this event. It's Health IT and Informatics, strategic tips to boost your resume and brand yourself in 2022. This is led by Samir, one of our volunteers, an alumni from Northeastern, and a great addition to our team. We'll hand it off to Liza, our president.
Thanks, Monique. So good evening, everyone. I'm Liza Cameron. I'm the president of New England HIMSS. I also work for Mass General Brigham as the director of data and analytics, product support, demand, and usability. I'm very excited for tonight's session on strategic tips to boost your resume and brand yourself. No matter where you are in your career, and there goes my phone, it's important to always keep these things in mind. So one thing though, before I do turn it over to Monique to get us kicked off again, I do have some sad news to share. So Dr. Joe Hyman, a longtime New England HIMSS member, volunteer, current treasurer, unfortunately passed away this weekend. He lost his battle with cancer. So before we get started, I know we're all heartbroken here at New England HIMSS, and we'd like to take a moment of silence to just remember Joe. So if everyone could just take a moment of silence before we get started, it'd be appreciated. Thank you. And with that, Monique, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Liza. So again, hello everyone, I'm Monique Chlevich. I'm the chair for the New England HIMSS Student Activities Chapter, an alumni from Northeastern University's Master in Health Informatics program, and by day, an EPIC analyst for professional billing at Mount Auburn Hospital. It's a privilege to be able to work amongst these speakers, our panelists, as well as all the volunteers up front today and also behind the scenes that go ahead and help us out in terms of navigating this entire event. We have all volunteers that give up their time. So tonight we have a wonderful program and looking forward to having you all. Thank you for coming.
Hello, I'm Samir Tapiawala. I'm a New England HIMSS Student Activity Committee volunteer since more than a year now. And I'm currently working with Autumn Insight and leading two new initiatives as a technical and data program manager. I come with more than 2 decades of experience in the healthcare sector. Last August, I graduated with Masters in Health Informatics from Northeastern University. I welcome you all for this webinar.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sara Khalil, and I'm also studying at Northeastern's Health Informatics program. I'll be graduating in May. And today I will be facilitating discussions related to today's topic. I'm currently volunteering with New England HIMSS Students Activities Committee, and I'm really excited about this event tonight. It'll be a great one, but I also wanted to mention, as a student that's volunteering, current student, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. You'll also learn later on that there are volunteering opportunities. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask me.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Liddy. I am a health informatics master's student at the University of New England, and I'm graduating this spring. During the day, I'm a systems analyst in Epic for Maine Health, an integrated health system here in Maine and New Hampshire. And in the evening time, I'm working on my practicum and following my pursuit of my passion for data analytics and data visualization. I second Sara's comments that this is a great organization, both to benefit from the wisdom by watching webinars like these, but also by participating as a volunteer. I volunteer here in the Student Activities Committee as well as the Advocacy Committee. And a big welcome to you all.
Hello everyone, my name is Mahalakshmi and I'm a student volunteer with New England HIMSS. By the day, I work as a HIM analyst at Waterbury Hospital, and I am also a freelance nutrition consultant. I've been volunteering with New England chapter since 2021, that is last year, and it's been a rewarding experience so far. To give you a slight perspective of what it is to volunteer with us is that in 2020, I was on the audience side, like you, listening to a webinar hosted by New England HIMSS, and there was a call for volunteering at the New England chapter. I applied, and in 2021, I got the opportunity to co-lead a webinar that was on soft skills. Maybe some of you might have attended it. There's so much you can learn, and the networking opportunity is phenomenal. About this evening's webinar, we have done a lot of work, and it is a vast topic, and we've tried hard to pack as much information as possible. With that being said, I want to turn it over to Renee, our panelist. Good evening, Renee.
Good evening. I'm Renee Broadbent. I'm the CIO of Southern New England Healthcare Organization. I'm also the secretary for New England HIMSS. I'm very happy to present this evening and participate with this wonderful group of folks. I hope you gain a lot of information from this webinar, and thank you for attending. We're very excited to have you here.
Yes, can the CIO remember to unmute himself? Hi, I'm Arthur Harvey. I'm the CIO, Boston Medical Center. I am delighted to be here tonight. I very much look forward to this. In addition to my work at BMC, I am on the board of New England HIMSS as well. I chair the CIO Council. In addition to that, I formerly was the chair of the Masters of Health Informatics program at Brandeis University for about 10 years. So I'm delighted to be here tonight. I would encourage you, ask us questions, because we're going to tell you what we think, but what we really want to do is help you. And it's easiest if you tell us what it is you want to know.
Hi, I'm Carly, and I'm a recruiter. I've been recruiting for about 5.5 years. I started recruiting for Equifax, CVS, and Aetna. And then last year, I just started with InterSystems, and they're a data technology company focused on healthcare. And I've been helping them out with mostly IT positions since then. And I'm excited to be a part of the panelists.
Hi, everyone. My name is Smile, and I usually don't introduce myself with my last name because nobody can remember. On one hand, on another hand, I want to be recognized like Sting or Madonna or Prince, or everybody remember by first name. And I'm associate co-op faculty at Corey College at Northeastern. I work primarily with computer science, robotics, and my favorite health informatics students. I love to work with international population, and I'm glad to be here. And my motto in my class is, I like to make students feel comfortable being uncomfortable, because everything from interviewing, networking, it's pretty uncomfortable environment, especially for newcomers in the United States.
Thank you so much, all of you, for introducing yourself. Smile, that was one of the best introductions that I have ever come across.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to this third and the last webinar of the webinar series organized by New England HIMSS Student Activity Committee. And I'm sure with the presence of experienced panelists from different focus areas, we are sure that this webinar will guide you in creating your personal brand using the most effective tool, the resume. The topic of this webinar is very close to my heart. I had a roller coaster ride of emotions and confusion during my last semester. As I said, I graduated last August, and I'm sure many of you are in the same phase what I was in the last August. There are many who guided me during that phase, and I'm happy to have few of them in this webinar, including these panelists. Let me tell you, even though these panelists are very senior and busy, they are still very easily approachable and super friendly. So do not hesitate to ask questions, raise your doubts, ask your questions in the Q&A section. You can see it below. And Student Activity Committee member will route your question to the panelists on your behalf. We intend to make this webinar interactive rather than a monotonous one. And so let's begin the show with our first poll question. What is the real purpose of a resume? Meanwhile, this is a multiple choice, so you can enter whatever you think is the answer. In the meantime, I think let's ask the panelists. Smile, what do you think is the real purpose of the resume?
I think a resume is it's a document, and I hate that word document, but it's the only one thing that can actually give you a job. In your degree, it's important, but it's not as important on a resume. What matters is what is on it and how you're presenting yourself, what you telling, what kind of story you're telling to people who looking in your resume. Resume, I like to say, it's a kind of like a first impression. If you walk in the door, on the door, and you meet someone, you already have impression in the first couple of seconds. And the resume is the same thing. As soon as recruiters or hiring managers lens their eyes, they should have some impression of you as a person.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Carly, what do you think is the real purpose of a resume?
Yeah, I think it's to give whoever's looking at it the chance to see who you are, what you've done without speaking to you for some time. So it represents you in a way.
Mm-hmm. So I hope everyone answered. Katie, can we have the outcome, the result of this? Okay. So 60% says to demonstrate your strength, 57% to provide a snapshot of a career, and only 34% says to impress your prospective employers. Renee, what are your thoughts on this result? only 37% says that it is to impress your prospective employers. What do you say?
Well,
about
so just to comment on it, for me, when I get literally thousands of emails and pieces of paper and LinkedIn connections, right? So if I'm looking for someone, I usually have a very specific thought in mind, like I want something for this role because I need to fill this gap in my organization, right? So I want to see, when I look at a resume, what are your strengths? I'm going right towards what I'm looking for in that resume. It's, you know, I think if you have what I'm looking for, it will go to number D. It will land you that interview if you're the person that's got the strengths that I'm looking for. It's great to have an overview of a career that certainly lends credibility to what you're presenting. But I'm looking to see where you're strong and where that fits into what I might be looking for in my organization now or down the road. Arthur, what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Arthur.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Like you, I get about 1 billion of these things. And the reality is you cannot read them all. I can't. Now, there are other people who do read them more than me, and we're going to talk about screening and stuff like that. But usually I'm trying to solve a specific problem. So I'm looking for something that tells me the person can solve that problem. I'm not prepared to be impressed. A piece of paper never impresses me. That's about people doing the work. What I would say, though, is my process, I wouldn't say the purpose of a resume is to land you a phone call. Okay. It's to land you a 15-minute phone call where I can assess whether it's worth bringing you in. I mean, that's sort of how it works. And I hate to say this, but there may be lots and lots of stuff on your resume that you think is important, but I probably don't care about most of it. The tricky bit, of course, is you don't know what it is I care about, right? And that's sort of the hard part, which is why, you know. So anyway, to me, that's my thought on this. I'm not surprised by the results. But fundamentally, it's about me using it to determine who am I going to call.
Right.
So in that way, Arthur, I was one of the luckiest of one from those 1 billion. You took out some time to review my resume. I feel very lucky in that sense. Thank you so much.
Well, that might have had something to do with the fact that you're an active member of HIMSS. Take note, all you students.
Right, exactly.
That is a really good way. We know each other now, and that's a good way to make connections.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll probably talk a little bit about that later on.
I think so.
Yeah, about knowing people, connecting. Sometimes that's your best avenue for hurdling over 100 other people.
Makes sense. Thank you so much, all of you, to answer that particular question. So we have decided to divide this particular entire webinar into 3 sections. The first section is we'll be focusing on why the personal branding is required. So here, all the panelists, they talked about what is there in the resume that attracts you, as whether you are a recruiter or a recruiting manager or a hiring manager. And with that, we'll go to that particular section. Sarah,
Awesome. So so this poll question gave a great overview and was a great segue into our discussion. And like Samir said, our discussion is going to be structured by different topics. And our first one is going to be focusing on personal branding. More specifically, why is personal branding required? And so I have a question for Carly, Renee, and Arthur. So let's say 2 people come to you with exact same skills and very similar profiles. Who would you call for an interview? And how would you make this decision based solely on their resume?
You want me to start?
Sure. Great.
If they legitimately had the same skills and they had the same sort of level of experience, I'd almost certainly call them both. The difference, though, is your resume can hurt you if it's badly written, if there's holes in it, if there's something that looks funny. That might make me more inclined to call the other one that was a little more polished.
Right. I would agree. Sometimes if I get a series of resumes, could be 1, could be 2, or could be more, that look almost identical, I might take a little extra time to go through each one of them and see if there's something that sticks out from one versus the other. Sometimes I like to see a little creativity with people on resumes, you know, like what about you makes you special? You know, great, you know, you have your master's degree in this and, you know, you've got some experience here, but what have you done? What makes you unique above the others? You know, say you volunteered for HIMSS, that might make you unique. But there's other things as well, right? So trying to maybe find that unique. Certainly if it was a tie or close to a tie, and not wanting to exclude anybody or miss out on the opportunity, I might screen all of them, because then that would then give me more of a basis in terms of who is going to stand out.
Yeah, I agree. If I could only pick one, I'd probably look for any interest or kind of passion that would relate to the position. So if that's an internship or anything, groups that they were a part of, anything like that, I would probably pick that person over the other.
Right. And one of the things I like to see on people's resumes, which may not directly relate to the job itself, is I appreciate people who volunteer their time, and they don't have to volunteer hundreds of hours, but people who give back and volunteer, because that tells me a little bit about their team player ability, right? Like they can function in a team and they want to do things differently. So I look for people who have a little bit of volunteerism on their resumes as well. So
I just wanted to summarize. So basically, I think one clear for the audience, one clear thing that stood out with all three answers is that it's good to be different. It's very easy to highlight skills that are pretty similar. So I'll give you specific examples, whether it's programming skills or taking specific classes. But what's gonna work to your advantage is highlighting how you're different or what you did with these skills, whether it's specific projects you've done or different kinds of experiences that will set you apart and make you a more interesting candidate to get an interview, because then they'd want to talk to you and hear more about these kinds of experiences. And I think we can move to poll question number 2.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you all of you for answering that question. But I think, yeah, that's an interesting answer. Where most of them did speak about speaking about how you are different than others. Let's move to our second poll question. Your competitive edge is not only your skill set, achievements, and past work experience, but equally who you are as a person. True or false? Let's have the answer. As expected. Oh. Okay, Renee, what do you want to talk about the 9%? Which the attendees, they are thinking that, okay, you as a person, you that's not the competitive edge, but it is more on the skill set and the achievement.
Well, I think that there's some element of truth to that, right? So your competitive edge is your skill set and achievement and your past work experience. That definitely contributes to it. Obviously, if you're filling a goal or a role in your organization, right, you want to have someone who matches to that. However, I think, but where the equally who you are as a person comes in is when you have that discussion with the person, right? So you can get to understand them a little bit more, right? And I do think that that's important. When I am looking for folks, right, I look at all the resumes, I look at each one individually, if I have a very specific target. And once I'm starting to decide what people I'm going to talk to, I do ask, questions that would target them to see who they are as a person. I have certain expectations about the people that work for me, as how they participate, like I mentioned before, as a team player, as contributors to that. So I do think it's important. That is an important aspect of it. I think you have to get through that sort of front door so you can have that conversation.
Smile, what are your thoughts? How we should highlight that about who you are as a person? You work a lot with the students on this.
So I think in this question, I think the key is this, like, equally who you are as a person. If you take that, it would be kind of like, oh, you as a person, it's 50% and 50% is skills or other achievements. And I would agree with that, because a couple of days ago, I read, like Simon Sinek said, you don't hire people for skills, you hire people for attitude. Because if I look in my class and I have 80 students in a class, pretty much all of them are very, very close in terms of their technical skills. But then, like, other part of that, you could technically hire either one of them. But when you bring them in, then you see who they are as a person. So I would say that could be not only like equally, it's almost more important than skill set, because whoever apply for job basically apply because they think that they have a skill set for it.
Thank you so much. So with that, we'll go to our next topic of making yourself, or how do you make yourself unique from others, and what is personal branding? That is what we'll be covering in the next session. Over to you, Maha.
Yeah, I have a question for our panelists. So we had them talking about your resume should stand out, as talk about who you are as a person. So how do I make my resume more than just a regular piece of paper, to the point that the employer should feel that, oh, I need to hire this person, I cannot miss them. How do I get to that point? And this is a question for all panelists.
You know, one of the best resumes I've seen, or actually, it's not the best resume, it's my resume actually, that I worked with somebody on. And one of the things that I did was keep it very concise, but also highlight skill sets right up front. And I would be happy to share my resume with anybody, because it you know, as old as I am, I could have pages and pages, right? And no one wants to see that, right? But it really did do a good job of putting key points together. And I think highlighting those right up front is really key to any good resume, right? I don't want to dig through pages. I don't think anybody wants to dig through pages of information, right? They want to just see up front. And if you can concisely say, this is who I am. The other thing that I've seen on resumes that I also like is a personal statement, a small personal statement up front. I mean, years ago when dirt was new, and probably when Arthur and I were getting out of school and going to work, we'd call it an objective. However, we don't see that as much anymore, right? But a personal statement about who you are, just short and brief, and then a summary of your skill sets. I think those two things right up front stick out to me 100%.
I like what you said there, and well, because
the oldest dirt part, the oldest dirt
well,
part.
I am that. As I like to point out, I did actually start on punch cards, people. Really, I'm not making that up. So I think there's a really important point there. I heard this old saw a long time ago, and it's true. Your resume should be no more than 2 pages unless you've won the Nobel Prize, and then you could have a third. Okay. There's a real temptation to want to put everything you've ever done on your resume. Now, you get a little older like me. I mean, I got a 35-year work history. Does anybody care about when I was writing the cost accounting system at Brigham and Women's Hospital before partners existed? Probably not. You know, so the details there, it's okay to, if you're chronologically going to list the stuff, that's fine, but stick to relevant things. And to Renee's point, some 2-sentence, 3-sentence purpose or why you're sending your resume in, I will read that. Okay. And then I will look. The other thing I look for, and this is what makes people stand out to me, I want to see people tell me why what they did was important. Okay.
Mhm.
Built a foopy poopy system. Okay. Lots of people built a foopy. We built a foopy poopy system that improved patient care by doing this or that metric or the other thing. Tell me why it was important. And that means that you're thoughtful about the reason your technical prowess are helping the business, because that's really what I want to know. Now, granted, I tend to be hiring people a little more senior. I'm not tending to hire people into, programmer analyst jobs. But my point there is, as you advance, you want to explain why what you do is useful. So that I really like when I see that.
Yeah, same.
Ali?
I also think if you're going to be in healthcare IT and you have to show a patient, you have to show somehow that you understand that the patient is the ultimate client in our world, even though it may not seem relatively far away as the IT person, but I tend to like to see that passion as well and have some understanding of, the space that we run in healthcare.
I would say it kind of goes with the first question, like what about two identical candidates? And I would say if I see some results that matters to me, I think that would be like very good reason why I would hire one person over another. So if they have a very, very similar resumes, but one has the results on it, and like Arthur said, why that matters, I think I would go always with that person.
The other thing too is so someone in the chat, and I know I'm not supposed to be reading it, but I did anyway, talked about Arthur and I were teasing about being older and having pages of resume. And it's a valid point. You have these valuable skills, right? And if it was 20 years back, the rule of thumb is don't go back farther than 10 years because no one's going to read it. Right. But if you do that summary up front where you identify skill sets, just one word bullets, that's what I have in mind. And like I said, I'd be happy to share it. And it, it might say leadership and it might say technology and it might say, it's just, I'm talking about, high level skills. So you don't necessarily lose those by not including some job you had 25 years ago on your resume. It's really that highlighted section, right? Because that's what people are looking for. I don't necessarily need to know 25 years ago what you were doing. It probably was a stepping stone to get you where you are now. And so that's fine and that's good. And it probably had it. But really what's relevant are the skill sets in the last several years. So those bullet points help solve that issue from way back when.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And I'll interject one other thing because we're talking sort of about how to create a brand, your personal brand. I realize this is a shocking concept. You can have more than one resume.
Yep.
Okay. I have multiple resumes. I have one for my academic pursuits. I have one for my CIO pursuits. I have others. I do ham radio crap. So I have a resume about ham radio. You don't have to try and put everything in a pile, right? You can pick, so a little targeting can go an awfully long way.
Yeah, agree.
I want to say also something maybe controversial. So because this is the time that work looks very different. It's a lot of remote work, hybrid work, all these different kinds. I would say if I have the resume that I can see on a resume, something that somebody point out that has remote work skills, like Slack, Teams, or Google file sharing document skills and document collaboration, that would be very interesting for me if I'm hiring for someone who is, which position is 100% remote. And I think you're putting in front of me information that I don't have to think. It's right there. And I know that you are using Zoom and Google and and Dropbox and all these things. I think it's also good to mention on a resume.
I agree with you. And let me tell you, Arthur, when I started writing my resume, it was 4 pages. Because
I seem to recall that.
And it was really tough to reduce it down to 1 or 2. 1 page, definitely it was difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think as everyone suggested that you have to bring it down to less than 2 pages or maybe maximum 2 pages. I agree. in that.
I just wanted to add the student's perspective because I'm in the process right now of going through all of this. One of the advice I got, which is very relevant to what we're discussing right now, is have a working draft of your resume that's pretty generic, and then have more specific ones that you can tailor to whatever specific job you're trying to apply for, which is very similar to what Arthur said. So I just wanted to share that since I'm in the process literally of doing that.
From my perspective, if I get a resume that is clearly tailored, that means that the candidate took the time to put some thought into what they were presenting to me. And that impresses me, as opposed to I've got a resume and I'm going to send it out to 52,000 job openings to see what happens. And look, we all do it. It happens. I get it. But that I completely agree with you. I think that's a really good technique. And that back to the branding thing, you're saying, oh, I have attention to detail. That's what that tells me.
Okay. So Renee, there is a request to share your resume.
Yes, I can share my resume. I'd be happy to send it. I send it out. I was actually looking for it on my phone and on my work laptop. I don't have it readily available. It must be on my Mac. So, but after this meeting, I'd be happy to share it out. I'll continue to look for it, but I would be, if I can, I'll if I find it, I'll bring it up and we can look at it.
Did you update it for the promotion?
Oh, you know what? I didn't.
No. Come on, that's the first. Everyone, the first thing you do when you get a new job is update your resume.
Right. So, okay. So, in fairness to me, it was just publicly announced 2 weeks ago. So, I get a hall pass for a couple of weeks, right?
Fair enough.
Okay. So here we were talking about resume for the experienced person. So one of the attendees is asking, what about resume building for a fresher?
I actually did find it. So if anybody wants to see it, I'm happy to share it.
If you're talking about somebody new to the industry, that's tough. Entry-level resumes are hard, okay? Because what you're going to have to stress is how your coursework. Now, if I'm hiring an entry-level individual, and look, I just don't do that anymore, but when I did, I would look for relevant coursework. I'd look for examples where they'd used it in a project or a practicum or something. And certainly if you'd done any volunteer work or any kind of something like that, or you had some student activities where you were using these skills and showing that you were a good team player, that would be the stuff that you'd put on there. Don't try and impress people with if I'm hiring somebody straight out of school, I'm not expecting them to have a ton of experience, but be creative about showing me what experience you have in a non-job format. And look, even if your job was working, I mean, my high school job was working at Sears Roebuck. I mean, I learned some skills at Sears Roebuck, like how to show up on time, that were useful skills. So you can talk about that. Just try and focus on the coursework and maybe how you'd used it in an activity somewhere.
Right. And if you had an internship or something along those lines that was applicable, and sometimes internships that you do have a published work. So you could offer that on the resume to say, I was doing this. And instead of getting, a lot of internships are not paid, some are, but there's a body of work that gets published. Like I had an intern this summer who is going into computer information, and his final project for me, in addition to doing a whole lot of other work for me, but his final project to me was to do a research and a presentation to the executive leadership team on what information on blockchain. And because nobody had an idea on it, and I didn't expect him to do like a PhD level presentation because he was in high school, but he's very bright, and that's what's his. And so something like that you could highlight on a resume, right? I presented in front of an executive team and got them to a general level understanding of what blockchain means for healthcare.
I wanted to say that is actually some really good advice that I received when I started looking to transition into health IT from a completely different career. And most of my experience has been my student experience in the master's program. And someone advised me to, instead of having a separate education spot on your resume, to include your education in your relevant experience. Clearly label it that it's your student experience, but list those projects, those concepts and those topics that you've studied, the big projects you've done, the papers you've written. It was really, really helpful, and it helped remove that block of how are they going to be interested and know that I know anything about health informatics if I just put I'm a student at, and I think it really made a huge difference, not only in the comfort level of applying for jobs in a new path, but also it clearly got attention because I'm now working in health IT. So.
And the other thing is too, is like, don't discount yourself, because I had a clinical/business analyst position open, right? And I wasn't really getting that many candidates. And so somebody that works for me said, oh, my daughter's boyfriend's cousin, uncle, was looking for a job. He just got out of school. And I'm like, it's a courtesy. I'll talk to him. I'll look at his resume. Looked at his resume. It was really well written. Didn't have a lot of practical experience, but he had a master's in cybersecurity, right? And so cybersecurity is everywhere right now. And that is a scope of my responsibility at my job, right? So I'm looking at it and I'm going, like, maybe this is a person I could develop or whatever. Let me see how it goes. Well, when I met with him, that's what he focused on, the things that he wanted and the reason that he wanted to be in here. And he impressed me. So I passed him along to my team. They liked him. And now he's working for us and he's a rock star, right? So don't give up on it, because that was just, a happenstantial type of thing, but he had a key skill and he was able to articulate it on his resume that was of interest to me and a value to the potential value to the organization. And it's something he did at school. So.
I also would like to mention that my students who are in the first semester, I usually recommend them to start thinking and look for additional projects. So projects they do in a class, but there is also a part of Northeastern that it does what is called experiential XN, experiential network. This is a place where you can find tons of very good projects that you can work in parallel with your coursework. And these are real life projects that companies share with Northeastern, and then Northeastern find the faculty who leads these projects. And having this project on your resume increases significantly chances to get something that's more kind of relevant to health informatics field.
So I have a question, and this particular question I have come across when I was talking to so many students who are freshers, since we are touching upon the issues that usually any freshers they face. When they explain me that, okay, even though it has been mentioned that it is for the fresher, when you go and have a look at the job description, they say 2 to 3 years of experience. How do they deal with it? Carly, I think this question is for you.
Sometimes managers will put 2 to 3 years because that's what ideally they want, but they'll still accept someone who's entry level. So I would still encourage people to apply. Worst case, you'll just be rejected, but I think it's still worth a try of applying to a job that says entry level and it says 2 to 3 years, because that may be just the ideal candidate and that candidate may not apply. So.
But I think the students generally, they get discouraged when they say, okay, the company is asking for 2 to 3 years of experience, which I'm not having. And though the job is of the entry level, I think that's where they are more confused whether to apply or not to apply.
I would tell them to still apply. I think it's hard because entry level, I guess 2 to 3 years still falls into that, because mid-level is probably around 5 years. So it's hard to kind of categorize the 2 to 3 under anything else.
I would say, yeah, I would say if they have everything else that matters to the company that they have on their resume, technical skills and other stuff on the resume, I would also encourage them to apply. if they don't have enough skills on their resumes for that position, I think it makes no sense to apply.
Well, that's actually a good point. I think one of the things you have to be careful, the market is very strange now, the strangest market I've ever been in for employees. And, I've got students in my class at SNU that are like, I'm just applying for these entry-level jobs and saying 2 or 3 years experience, how am I getting through the door? But then I had a director level position posted, which had very specific requirements. And I've got people all over the board applying for something. One person was a chocolatier. I'm like, it says data integration person, and the person was a chocolatier, which has its benefits on the team. I can't deny that. But I mean, be realistic about what you're applying for. If it's so outside the bounds of what you have, be realistic, because then you're just wasting everybody's time, including your own.
Yeah, I have very often students who says, like, I applied 250 positions.
Right.
Like, first of all, Samir and Sarah knows that there is no 250 positions for health informatics students on any work. We wish that there is. This is not like software development position. So that's immediately sending me a signal that these students didn't really apply for jobs that they are qualified for, but rather to just kind of mass mailing, just apply for anything. And I usually say, if employers is looking for 5 very important skills for them, if you have a 4, apply. If you have a 3, well, you can, but don't count like yourself like a serious candidate for it.
Exactly. Yeah. And not to interject, off the top of my head, I remember being within a New England healthcare system, and a friend of mine was applying to the same company, and he was really aggressive in terms of his search and had applied to several jobs. I'd like to say well over 3. And a hiring manager came up to me, knowing that we had previously worked together, and said, hey, do you know so-and-so? He's applying very rigorously, and it doesn't necessarily put best foot forward in that scenario. So maybe Carly can harp to it a little bit more, but that was the feedback that I had received internally firsthand.
Yes, we can see in the system how many jobs you applied to, and if you've applied to the same job multiple times, and then we start giving you name, serial applier, and just kind of pass over because we can see that you've applied to 20 plus recs. So you do want to be careful about what you're applying to and make sure it's relevant.
Okay, thank you so much. And now we will enter into the the topic that I think most of the attendees are looking forward to. How do we create an impactful resume? Over to you, Liddy.
Yeah, thanks, Samir. And I just wanted to reassure folks who've written questions in the Q&A that I said we would get to later. For example, about keywords. We will get to those. It's hard. Actually, this question is for Carly and Smile. To create a dynamic and well-rounded personal brand, what are the crucial elements within a resume that can project me as a unique brand? And I think that's the question underlying with all these keywords, is how do you maintain a unique brand while also dealing with the realities of automated systems that are searching for keywords?
Carly, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I know it is hard. You want the key terms, and I think a good way to find the key terms is by looking at maybe the job description and in what skills they're looking for. You can find the key terms that way. So definitely add those if they're relevant to your experience, to your job, because if we're getting hundreds of applicants, we can search those hundreds of resumes by just putting the key terms, and that could filter it out. So if you don't have the key term in your resume, you could be one of the ones filtered out. So just make sure you have some of that in, but I wouldn't just put all the key terms in kind of a big pile, and make sure it still shows who you are as a person, your other experience.
Yeah, I would go and say that considering that recruiters don't really see resume before the keywords, that you have to really deeply understand what the company stands for, what is matters to them, and read. My students can confirm job description 3 times, at least 3 times before you do anything else, to make sure that you can picture yourself doing that job and then start thinking and looking in your resume to see what technologies matter to them, what language they use when they're talking on their website. And then include that vocabulary and language into your resume. So that will be like some of the very key words that employers will be looking for. So students, on the other hand, also tend to have like unconventional resumes because the AI or robots are reading your resumes. So you need to kind of outsmart them. They are trained by the people and they're doing things what people tell them to do. So if you have unconventional formatting resume, that can throw them off. And like vocabulary that you use, it's not the vocabulary that's used in this company. So you need to pay attention to that when you submitting your resume. If you submitted and the resume still gets picked up and you get a call, I think what matters will be how you're going to talk about these things during the interview. So again, the same vocabulary that you use, what matters to these companies, it should be used not overwhelmingly, but used throughout the interview. Also, students tend to overload with the projects, especially if they don't have a lot of work experience. And a couple of panelists already mentioned, really keep on your resume only projects that matters to potential role that you are applying for. And you can have project from your freshman year in college that it's totally irrelevant. So don't try to use that just to fill the space. Rather understand the role, and then what projects or work that you did, explain that a little bit more so that they can see, potential employer can see how you match with this position, even though it's not necessarily a direct experience. It's a more kind of transferable experience and how what kind of value you bring to the table. And then I mentioned that before, I think results are very important part of the resume. So my students knows, I always say that every accomplishment statement or bullet points have 4 pieces: strong action verb, action, tools, technologies, and result. If you cover this in a nice, thoughtful way, I think you're creating your brand, you're creating the resume that is going to be attractive to employers.
I think, Smile, that's a great point when you are talking about how do you mention your accomplishments. So people do write down in wordy sentences, but what you are trying to say, it should be an action verb with some kind of outcome. Do you think it in terms of some figures or the percentage can help or can create more impact? Now, for example, if you were on one particular project and your responsibility was XYZ, and that created a 20% reduction of the time and the project by 20%, something like that. Are you trying to say that?
Yeah, so for example, if you have an accomplishment statement that starts with worked in a team to develop something, I think if you just rephrase this statement, like develop this application in a team of 4, I think it makes a difference. It's very easy for recruiters to see that you are capable of develop, you are good also, you're working in a team, and result of that was save in average, I don't know, 5% for that project. So I think the wording, it's really matters. And if you say worked, well, we all go to work. We all go to work, but what did you do? That's what employers would like to know. So if you use the poor vocabulary and language, it's not gonna like be very good received on the other end.
Mm-hmm. So here is a question from the one of the attendees. Should our resume follow a basic outline, or is it okay to change the format a little bit as per our profile?
I think I mentioned that. I think, first of all, your resume, it's yours. It's not mine. I can give you suggestions. I can recommend things. But at the end of the day, you are the one who's making decision maker. If you want to keep it, if you want to listen, that's okay. If you don't want to listen, I cannot force anybody to put in a resume or make a resume to look different. So my job is to give students as many options as I can, and I think they will decide in their own what they think would be best for them.
Mm-hmm. So Arthur and Renee, in what kind of format would you like to see the resume? And I remember Renee mentioned that it has to be very creative, right? So when you say creative, what exactly do you expect in the resume?
Yeah.
Format.
I'm not expecting a creative format. Okay.
Okay.
Unless you're applying for a marketing job. Unless you're applying for a marketing job.
Fair enough. But if you're applying for a marketing job and you're applying to me, you've erred very significantly. But I'm looking for creative problem solving. Talk to me. I care about the content, right? What have you done? Talk to me about projects you've done and how they've impacted something and how you've maybe been creative in doing that. That matters to me. I will be honest, I don't care at all about the format. The simpler, the better. I'm old, so make the type really big. Just kidding. The reality is, look, you know how this works. The resumes come into the great machine. It turns the crank, and then the recruiter hands me the ones that they think I'll be interested in. And there's a learning process there because I'm convinced that the machine dumps all the good ones and just gives me the bad ones. But I'm told that that's not true. But I'm going to look at them, and all I care about is this person going to help me solve my problems? Okay. And I'm not in marketing, and I'm colorblind, so I don't care. I mean, just give it to me simply, directly. And that actually, I think, it doesn't have to be, typewritten, but you know what I mean. Make it nice and simple and to the point. That's what I really want. And I may be different than everybody else, but to me, I would refer to a nice, concise resume is elegant, if it's got all kinds of special goofiness to it, and God forbid you put links to something in it, because I'm not clicking on them.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, no, so I think, I mean, when I say creativity, I mean, I'm looking for something that makes a person stand out that's different, right? It still has to solve the problem that I'm looking for. I'm not going to hire a chocolatier for a director of data integration. It's exciting that my team.
That would be creative.
It would be creative. However, it would not solve my problem of someone who needs to look at volumes of protected health information and find out if the data quality is good, right? Yeah. So I did have them post I wasn't able to do it, but I did post my resume in the site, and you'll see like mine are bullet points. I mean, I've had a lot of work experience, so my resume is a little bit longer, but each thing under each job has 8 or 9 bullet points of what I accomplished, right? So past tense for the jobs I already did, and they're key points. So I work, in a little bit of a different field in healthcare, right? So things that are important in my resume, if I've worked in an ACO before, is how did I participate helping the organization get shared savings? That's what they're looking for, right? So really understanding your audience and making sure those bullet points to the best you can, or those skill sets to the best you can, are reflected in that.
Okay. Thank you so
Renee,
much.
thank you.
Yep, over to you, Monica.
Thank you. So all that information at hand, we're going to segue over into branding. And for all of our panelists here, what is a branding statement and how to then use it from 2 perspectives? So if you're seasoned in your career and you're trying to get into health informatics, I did see a question from an RN saying that she's finishing up informatics in terms of her master's, and with no experience, how do you then make your resume or even branding appealing? And then second perspective, if you have minimal experience, again, as a student. Arthur, do you want to start?
Sure. And again, my brand is curmudgeon. Okay. So I'm not a marketing guy. Okay. And I present myself a certain way, and I think, and that is a brand, but the whole, well, we want to focus on exactly what my brand is, like I'm going to change myself to fit a brand. That does not resonate with me at all. I mean, the questions that were posed were more about how do I, because there's 2 of them, there's also one from a physician in here, about how do I change my career focus from clinical into more informatics. And that's, and again, I'm not trying to be pejorative with the word branding. Okay. That's really more about, and you may make a case, I want to change my brand to be an informaticist, but the reality is you're saying, I want to segue my career to something else. And there's techniques to do that, but I don't think you do that on a resume. I mean, a resume can help you to say, look, I've either achieved this informatics degree, or I've been board certified, or I have some other certification or whatever about this, and I have an interest in this. And then some demonstration that you actually know what you're talking about, that I did a quality project for, I got into this because I was doing quality work for my organization and the data fascinated me. Okay. And that way you can say, I aspire to do this work. So maybe that's not my brand yet, but that's what I aspire to. So I get that. So to me, I haven't ever seen a quote branding statement on a resume. I've seen plenty of personal statements, which I suppose is where that factors in. The good ones explain to me what they're interested in. And those are, I find, as we've said, a number of us have said, we all find those helpful, presuming they're concise, but that's about the extent of it for me. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
Well, that's good to know for folks that are getting used to the verbiage or interested in applying it one way versus another. It gives some sort of feedback. Carly, I didn't know if you had any sort of input on this.
Yeah, I would say just looking at the experience, I would be maybe confused about what you'd be looking to get into if you're recently doing a master's. So any kind of sentence that you could put where, like, I have this previous experience in this master's and I want to combine it to do this in find a new opportunity where I can use both these skills, something like that, to show the employer what you're looking to do in your next role.
I would
and I
just, sorry.
So I think too, one thing that people forget about, and I'm seeing a lot, because of course we have a system, obviously, that people post stuff, but there's some basic things. I think some of that, what we're talking about, can also be highlighted and covered in a cover letter, right? People don't do that anymore. They just slap the resume up on the website, and I'm like, I have no perspective. But I think that there's real value to taking the time. Cover letter doesn't have to be 15 pages long, but just why you're applying it, what skills you have that make you a good fit for that, whether you're just getting out of school or you've got 5 years or 10 years experience, but get to the point in the cover letter, because that might be the first thing I look at, right, before I get to the resume. And so that'd give me a really good idea. So think about, if you're talking about branding yourself or having something that stands out, people forget to do that more times than not. They don't put a cover letter in anymore. They just put the resume up, or they put a few keywords in, and that's it.
I would say a couple of things. I'm kind of with Arthur on this. I don't see branding really on a resume, like how to weave that in other than using the language. And I see this as two kind of pieces. Like branding is about answering three questions: what you do, how you do it, and what your way of doing it, why it's unique. So this is the something, but if you can answer these three questions in a cover letter, I think would be good place. I don't still see that it's part of the resume. So on the other hand, what branding means to me is the few things. For students, especially like students in Corey College who are like technically savvy, I think they have a lot of reasons to create the personal website, which is significant part of your branding. You need to harness social media because it's everything that you're trying to sell in a resume. If it doesn't shows in other like social media, I think it's gonna one way or another hurt you at some point in some company. So make sure that you're consistent in messaging about who you are, what you like, where you stand in terms of your development and things like that. And be part of something else that can help you to develop and present yourself in a different kind of light. So that could be some kind of volunteering and other kind of activities. But all of that social networking and the things in your resume and your cover letter, it has to be one messaging on it. So if it's not, you better clean up your Instagram or Facebook and some other things that at some point can hurt you.
I agree. I think the messaging, especially on LinkedIn, is something that factors in with employers. That's the go-to for a lot of folks right away when something comes in terms of a resume. So thank you for that, everyone.
Yeah, thank you all for answering that particular question. And now we will move to our next. We talked about branding statement. We talked about summary. We discussed about keywords and how do you highlight accomplishments in your resume. So let's move to our next poll question.
That number 3, Samir, is that 4?
Number 3. There you go. What is the most important element in the resume that stands out from others? What do you think, attendees? Again, it's a multiple choice question. So Carly, what do you think? What is the most important element in the resume? Or are you of the opinion that all are important in some or
I
the
think
other way?
Yeah, I think they all are important. I would like to see what you're interested in doing to make sure it fits with what the job is. So I think kind of your goal would be important, because if it doesn't align with the job, then I don't think it would be a good fit either for us or for you. So that would probably be my first point.
Okay, can we have the answers? Okay. Hey, so 50% of the opinion goal, 50% accomplishments, and 31% branding, and 28%. 9 out of 32, they say that, okay, keywords are important. Are you surprised, Carly, to see 9 out of 32 of the opinion that keywords are important, and the remaining 23 are saying not?
I guess they're all important. I wish I could select them all.
Yeah, it was a multiple choice. Still, 9 out of 32, they said, okay, keywords are important. Only 9 consider that keywords are important element.
They are, yeah. Because if you don't put in the right keywords, you could get selected out of the pile of resumes. So those are definitely important to have in there. They're relevant.
I think that will take us to our next question. Monique.
Thank you, Samir. So this question is for all of our panelists again. So say, for example, we have a candidate who's very confident into going into a health IT role. And when they receive the response back, it's actually a rejection email. How do you then pivot? Is this something where you need to reconsider the keywords that you're using on your resume? And if so, which ones are generally used more often to get the ATS system's attention? Give it a minute to folks to think over, but we will be able to give our audience a leg up and to avoid that rejection email, essentially. So.
Yeah, so I think like one of the things is if it happens one time, just you get that rejection or whatever, don't give up, because sometimes it's just not the perfect fit, and that might be the reason why. In our system, we do not use keywords. Everybody who posts a resume is put into the system, right? So I don't have to deal with that word search function, right? I scan my resumes, and I don't have any other function to be able to go and do that. And I think, the unfortunate thing is those CAN systems, which I think are terrible, come back and just say, I'm sorry, there were better candidates or whatever. It's hard for you to figure out how you should change things around, right? So I would say if you're applying for a lot of those jobs and you are getting that, then I would look at the jobs you're applying for and then look at your resume, right? And see if you can identify any gaps, right? That like make a system say, I missed those keywords, and then go back and perhaps make your resume have more targeted points in it regarding those keywords. And I think, that is something that I would do, at least if I was going through that sort of process, right? So, it's hard. There's a lot of systems. It's hard. You don't want to just be tailoring a resume to get, pings it into the system. I'm interested to hear people's feedback on that, because I don't see a huge volume of applications anymore. I think it's an employee's market, and I think that people have lots of options right now. So I'm curious as to that.
I think an exercise that I've worked with my students back in the day was take the job description, print it out on paper, and then use a highlighter pen to highlight what you think the key items in the job description are, and make sure that your resume somehow addresses those. Okay, that is an exercise that has worked. In terms of what happens if you get a rejection, the sad fact is you're going to get rejections, and there may be good reasons for it, maybe bad reasons for it. I will say, I'm not going to guarantee this of all organizations. I will say that most big organizations aren't going to spend the time to explain to you why you got rejected. They don't have the time. So what can really help is if you know somebody somewhere in an organization, you can ask them and they might be willing to help you out and say, well, I don't know, let me ask. Okay. And you might get at least some tidbit of feedback. I know I've done that in the past. It's been helpful. So I think that's sort of one way around this. Now, Renee, to your point, I agree. There are less applicants now, although we're still getting an awful lot of applicants for entry-level jobs. What I would say is we're getting a lot of less qualified applicants.
Yes.
Okay, I don't think we're getting, I don't think the volume's changed. I think the quality's dropped a bit for when we're trying to fill something. So I think that's, I think that you're still, it's the forest and the trees problem, right? You still got a lot of noise and you're trying to tease out the signal. That being said, I agree with you. We certainly are speaking to a much higher percentage of the resumes that we would define as qualified. I mean, maybe we were a little more selective before, we're a little more open now. To the point made earlier, yeah, the job description says 1 to 2 years of experience because we haven't updated the job description in a decade. But if you're fresh out of college, absolutely, if you got the skills, we'll talk. So I think there's some of that going on. That's my sense of it anyway.
It's good to know.
I would agree with both Renee and Arthur. And I think I do kind of both of these things I did with my students. I would just mention one more thing. It's if you get a rejection letter, it's a time to think, it's gotta be someone who is much better than me. You have to have that kind of growth mindset, that thinking it's like, okay, somebody got the job who has a more experience than me, and I have to move on and I have to think how to fix it. So I'm going back to Renee's decision, and on my whiteboard in my office is literally 3 things, like a job description, resume, and a third thing that I call brain dump. So that this is where you basically move things around based on the job that you are applying for. So, so that's a time to be an adult, time to be like, and respect the people who got the job before you got it, and just keep looking and working. And I would say to the second part that Carly posted, Renee posted, is I applied for a job at Northeastern, and I was working in a kind of career development for 11 years before I applied for a job at Northeastern. And I applied, but I never got a call back from anybody from Northeastern. I applied for 5 different jobs, 5 different colleges, same co-op advisor positions like I do now, and I never heard from any of them. And so they think that I was not qualified because I didn't work in health, in higher education environment. So sometimes that could be issue. I don't know. I'm not saying that Renee or Arthur, these things happen to you, but in some places it does. I think higher education is very specific. If you don't have experience, it's really difficult to break in.
Yep.
I would say you don't always get rejected because of your experience. It could be timing. We leave a job open until a candidate accepts an offer. So we could have a candidate that we extend an offer to already, but the job's still open. So you didn't really get a fair shot because we have someone in mind, but it's open until they accept it. So it could be timing. We could have moved forward with the internal candidate. It's not always you. So
yeah, exactly.
Right. I would agree with that. We do leave ours up a long time, waiting for that person to start. I always like them to be removed once that happens, so people aren't getting falsely, led down a road thinking they're doing that. The unfortunate thing today, and this is a real issue, is that we've had multiple candidates get all the way to the end and then go, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm changing careers. I don't want to get a COVID shot. I don't want to travel. I want to be 100% remote, even though we've said all along, these are the absolute, it's hybrid. You need your shots. We're a healthcare company, blah, blah, blah. And so if we don't keep it open a long time and you get a larger pool, then we've often have that experience as well. So that factors into it, I think, as well. At least now it does.
HR yelled at me because I'm requiring distemper shots.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, thank you. So I think we have a few questions from the attendees, and one of them is related to, because we discussed about cover letter, and it is about the cover letter and the resume. So as recruiters or hiring managers, do you ever like being approached by a candidate with cover letter plus resume outside the context of a specific posted job, rather than appealing to the organization due to strong sense of mission fit?
Okay, I'll take that one.
Mhm.
I have no problem with people. Now, I really don't like to be chased across a conference floor with somebody waving their resume and cover letter at me. I come up and say hello and talk about things. I know what LinkedIn is. I can find you. So it is perfectly reasonable at an event, and I'm just going to use HIMSS as an example, but there's others too. I mean, at a HIMSS event, it's perfectly reasonable to come up to me and say, "Hi, Arthur, I'm so-and-so from Lesson 2, and I just got this. I was wondering whether I could talk to you about opportunities or how to grow my career or something like that." And I'm happy to have that discussion. Now, I might, depending on where you are in your career or what it is you're looking to do, I'll discuss it with you, and I might refer you to one of my managers who's closer to that job than I am. I might not know the details, right? But always happy to look, those of us, particularly those of us who volunteer for HIMSS, look, I have other things I could be doing this evening, right? We do this because we want to help you. We want to help you in your careers. So we're happy to talk to you. But I'm not going to hire anybody from that conversation, but it's good to get to know you, and then we can connect. And that's the way that's, I think the word is networking. That's how it works.
Yep, I would agree.
Thank you, Arthur, for asking that question. I think we covered that particular part of networking in our previous webinars. So one last question, actually there are two questions, but I'll combine both of them. One of the attendees is FC FMG certified physician with EMR super user with little prior informatics experience. Do I need to take the CP HIMSS exam to boost my chances for clinical informatics role? And another question is, are there any certifications that make the candidate stand out from the others?
I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll address the certifications that make candidates stand out. It depends on what the job is that I'm hiring for. So, you know what? I'm a high trust assessor. That was important when I was at Wolf & Company because I did high trust assessments for startup companies that were dealing with a lot of protected health information, right? I still have the certification. I'm looking to get my EDW high trust certified now. Helps that I have that, but I'm also looking for other people that might have similar certifications, right? If there's a job warrants it and the certification helps create the credibility, then that's something that I would be looking for. I've seen a lot of resumes where people have one certification after other that might not be relevant for one of you. Well, good for you for educating yourself. I appreciate that. But if it's not relevant for my job, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll be specific on these. Now, I am a CP HIMSS. Do you need it? No. Is it useful and interesting? Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad thing to do. I don't now set aside Epic certifications. Like if you're going to want to be an Epic analyst, that's a whole different kettle of fish. As Renee said, if it's relevant and we're hiring an experienced Epic analyst, we would expect you to have those certifications. But the general purpose ones are nice to haves, and they can differentiate you in a bigger pool. But these two specific questions were about clinicians, okay? And there's a ton of opportunities. Clinicians sometimes have a hard time making that jump. The best thing you can do is to reach out to another clinician who's already there to talk about their path. And if you need help, reach out to me, arthur.harvey@bmc.org. I'm easy to find. And I can connect you to our clinical informaticists to talk about how to get there, because I think it's a wonderful jump to make. And usually you get there by going through a quality route or something, but happy to have that discussion with you. Absolutely. The industry needs people like you, seriously.
Right. Agree.
That's pretty encouraging. I hope you got the answer and the direction. Thank you so much. That's all we had from our end. Over to you, Monique.
Sure, we're going to skip Katie to a slide. There we go. All righty. So again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. A part of what we're really trying to accomplish here through our committee is to be able to provide you with opportunities to learn and also grow. And I say that with this next slide because approaching in March is the opportunity to apply to our student poster contest. We started this last year and it's going to continue throughout. So the objection is to submit your proposal. You have two options, a traditional literature review or also a review based on actual project-based experience. So any sort of internship or co-op that you've done in the past with information presented as it relates to health informatics, health IT. And so we'll start going ahead to advertise that on our website and through emails if you're connected through our mailing list and project these opportunities. So our committee will go ahead to evaluate all the proposals that come forward. And what's really great about this is that there are opportunities to win prize money. So our past recipients were able to receive $1,000 in Amazon gift cards for first place, second place, $500 in Amazon gift cards, and third place, $250 for Amazon gift cards. In addition to the actual reward, everything is presented in front of our past President's Club, the PPC, with the New England HIMSS. So seasoned professionals who are like Harvey that have done all of this in terms of their career, their growth and opportunity and so forth. That knowledge base is going to be going ahead to judge the actual poster contest in person. So that opportunity to network with those folks is very rewarding in and of itself. You're able to meet them firsthand and keep in touch with them throughout your career. So that's opportunity number one. Number two, we keep in touch with you. So we've actually had our first place winner, Rashani Patel, speak in our September webinar. So it gives you a voice, it gives you a platform in order to advertise yourself if you're looking for a new role, or to really highlight your involvement with HIMSS on a higher level. So it's something that we go ahead to recommend. In addition to, we take our three winners, or three finalists, and post their picture and their background on our website. So it's something, again, if you're looking for a new job or you're looking to expand upon your career, if a hiring manager were to go ahead, type your name in and do a quick Google search, it's something that might appear, might be a way to sell yourself and promote yourself in a different way. So keep out for our LinkedIn posts. If you're friends or connections with any of us here on the Student Activities Committee, you'll be able to receive those updates. And then another opportunity that we have two volunteer openings on our Student Activities Committee. So you would get to work with us, these fine folks, and network with them as well. We have various backgrounds, various schools, and various states represented here this evening. So it's a good way to get on the committee in and of itself and actually understand how a nonprofit board works. You're invited to our monthly meetings and so forth. So there is a commitment of 4 to 8 hours, generally speaking, and it is a vetting process that you do go through. So keep that in mind. And if you want to get involved, please reach out to us at anyhimssa@gmail.com. If you have any questions or just want to learn more, LinkedIn is a great way to get in touch with our volunteers. They're very responsive, they're very warm, they're very friendly. So we encourage you to reach out and get in touch. Similarly, we also have an advocacy committee. Liddy can speak to it more, but she's fantastic at it. She balances both acts. She does student activities and she does advocacy. And their background is more so dealing with different states and local advocacy networks to keep in touch with policy issues and change. So if it's something that you're curious about, or it's something that you're seasoned in and want to give back a little bit more, it's a great way to be in touch with our folks, as well as Mary. She is head of the committee now and had mentioned to me that she does have openings, something to keep in mind. And last but not least, we appreciate everybody that's here this evening, our panelists, our volunteers, and all of you in terms of being our audience. It's a pleasure to work with you and give you advice. We are here to help. So going forward, this is our last webinar of the year. We'll have more opportunities through the student poster contest, but if there are ideas or topics or specifics that you'd like us to hone in on for the following year, we're here to listen. So just let us know what works best, what you have suggestions for us. It's all very helpful. So thank you all. Samira, any thoughts? Any closing remarks?
Thank you all for participating and making this event success. I really thank the panelists, all the panelists and those who have worked on the backside along with me, Maha, Lidi, Sarah, and Monique, you also. And definitely, I thank everyone for this. I think it was a wonderful experience talking to you and talking about all the questions that I personally had regarding resume. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night and see you in the next webinar.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.